Sony's top-of-the-line Bravia 9 ranks among the best TVs I have ever tested. Recommending it is an absolute no-brainer. However, its roughly $3,000 starting price is arguably its biggest real-world flaw when deciding, whether or not to buy it. And it's because of this that I was excited to get my hands on Sony's more affordable mini LED TV, the Bravia 7, to see how close it comes to the reference performance of its big brother. The Bravia 7 is available in 4 sizes, 55, 65, 75, and 85 inches diagonally. We're reviewing the 85-inch model today, which retails for less than the 65-inch Bravia 9. And a quick glance at the 7 spec sheet reads eerily similar to that of the 9, so much so that you would be forgiven in thinking you were, buying the same TV. Like the 9, the 7 uses Sony's XR processor, which enhances the image in real time, for greater contrast, color accuracy, and just overall image clarity. It also has Sony's XR backlight master drive, another similarity to the costlier 9. The 7, like the 9, is a native 4K display with support for video formats ranging from SD on up to 4K HDR, which includes Dolby Vision, HLG, and HDR10. Speaking of Dolby, the 7 also supports Dolby Atmos content, which can be played back through the TV's built-in speakers, complete with Voice Zoom 3, Sony's latest voice isolation and enhancement tech. When used with compatible Sony speakers or soundbars, you can engage acoustic center sync. Now, this feature enables the TV speakers to act, more or less as a dedicated center speaker for better home theater viewing. Of course, if you have a more traditional home theater setup, one that uses, say, an AV receiver and separate speakers, surround sound audio, including Dolby Atmos, can be sent to your receiver using the 7's ARC eARC HDMI port. And the 7 has 4 HDMI ports, 2 of which are HDMI 2.1, which supports signals up to 4K 120 and gaming features like VRR and ALLM. Sadly, though, like the costlier 9, the other 2 HDMI ports on the 7 are limited to 4K 60 signals. What's more, one of the HDMI 2.1 ports also serves as the TV's ARC port, leaving you with just one additional next-gen HDMI option, which kind of sucks, especially considering that, many of Sony's competitors now include 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, so you don't have to prioritize what to connect to your TV for best results. The 7 uses Google TV as its operating system, giving you access to popular video and music streaming services like Netflix, Disney+, Max, YouTube, and even Apple TV without having to rely on a third-party streaming device like an Apple TV or Roku. You also get access to Sony's own streaming service, Sony Pictures Core, which features higher bitrate transfers of Sony content similar to what you may enjoy on a Kaleidoscape system, only without needing a costly separate streaming device. There's also a special auto-calibrated mode when viewing movies using Sony Picture Core as well as Netflix, which in theory will ensure that you're seeing the film exactly as intended with no need for added adjustments. The 7 replaced our 98-inch X90L as the main TV in our living room. While the 7 spec sheet may read like the 9, visually the 2 TVs are incredibly different. Don't get me wrong, the 7 is a well-built, nicely designed display, but the Bravia 9 is on a whole other level, sporting a thinner bezel, shallower depth, and a slightly better screen for controlling glare and reflections, especially off-axis. No doubt these are just a few of the features that explain the 9's more premium price tag compared to the 7. Still, it's not as if the 7 is ugly or cumbersome. I mean, compared to our thick X90L, the 7 physically, it looks more like an OLED TV in comparison. From the factory, the 7 launched in its standard picture profile, which, not gonna lie, looked better than most default picture profiles from other manufacturers. Standard isn't pixel perfect or accurate by any means. Still, its more contrasty and saturated image will undoubtedly please some viewers, and it's gonna be impressive enough that switching to another image profile may not be top of mind. All that said, there are better, more accurate picture profiles with the 7. 2, actually. For the most accurate image straight out of the box, I recommend choosing either the Cinema or Professional Picture Profile. Both the Cinema and Professional profiles measured incredibly well from the factory and could be considered calibrated, as both had delta E's or margin of errors of less than 3. For comparison's sake, the standard profile out of the box had a delta E of 6 for both grayscale and color. So while it looked good, both the Cinema and professional profiles looked better and are more accurate. However, at least out of the box, the cinema and professional profiles will look less bright compared to standard, though not to worry, because setting the panel's brightness settings to their maximum, it doesn't ruin either profile's accuracy and can make them as bright as some of the 7's other profiles. I actually sustained brightness figures of over 1,000 nits with standard definition or non-HDR content, with peak brightness runs using HDR content coming close to 2,000 nits. I know, Sony may not be known for their brightness figures, but the 7 was impressive in this regard, though the costlier 9 does get brighter. It's another reason why it costs more. Still, for a sub $2,500 85-inch display, the 7 dishes out one hell of a bright and accurate image straight out of the box, regardless of your choice in content. Now, for best results, I recommend using the professional picture profile, setting the brightness to maximum and the peak luminance and local dimming to medium or high, based on your personal taste, and just kind of leave well enough alone. Using these simple settings, you are going to enjoy an accurate image that is also bright enough that dark scenes aren't going to appear too dark or crushed and will be able to be enjoyed in rooms with ambient light. Though I need to point out that those of you who either know how or are willing to spend, that little extra money for professional calibration, the 7 has the higher level picture controls that allow it to be calibrated to near perfection, achieving margins of error for both grayscale and color of less than 1. Regardless of what I was watching, be it television, streaming, physical media, or even gaming through our PS5, I found little to complain about when enjoying the Bravia 7 as my daily driver. Using the settings I just spoke about a second ago, I was able to enjoy a bright, naturally saturated, and contrasty image that looked good on the broadest range of content. Even early episodes of The Walking Dead, which were shot on Super 16mm film, still maintain their old school film aesthetic while appearing sharper and more defined in terms of their color and low light gradation than I recall seeing from other more obtainable TVs that the 7 competes with. Now, the 7 didn't quite match the absolute organic naturalness of our Sony OLED in our bedroom when watching the same content. The 7's brighter picture, though, provided for a greater level of definition and perceivable detail during the darker scenes compared to the OLED. But switching my focus to more modern content, especially television and movies mastered in Dolby Vision, I think most users sitting more or less in front of the 7, at a normal viewing distance, would have a lot of difficulty telling the 7 apart from the costlier 9 in most cases. Watching the limited series Apple Cider Vinegar on Netflix really showcased the 7's color accuracy and just depth of color as primaries like blue and red just popped off the screen in a way I haven't really seen since my time with the 9 or TCL's QM8 series. The show also highlighted the 7's ability to render fine textures and details precisely, differences in skin and hair types with just absolute precision. In terms of skin tone, wisps of hair, or the delicate variation in clothing, when viewing Ultra HD or Dolby Vision content, the 7 is every bit as resolving as its costlier sibling, and even went toe-to-toe with our OLED when viewing the same content. When watching movies like Deadpool and Wolverine, 6 Underground, and animated films like Moana 2, it was pretty much the same story. The 7 simply shined. Admittedly, I don't watch a lot of sports when college football isn't in season, so the little basketball that I did catch on ESPN or through the ESPN app looked great. Though, and this is a caveat that can apply to most streaming content, I did discover that I needed to turn the Sony's motion interpolation settings to low or off to avoid jerky shifts during rapid pans. The 7's default motion settings, they're just a little bit too high for broadcast sports and some streaming content, and it results in some camera movements appearing more stuttery than smooth. Nice to know that disabling these motion settings rids the 7 of these motion errors while maintaining, a naturally smooth motion. And while I'm on the topic of things you may need to be aware of, another area where the 7 doesn't quite rise to the same level as the 9 and maybe some other mini LED TVs on the market is viewing angle. The 7's viewing angle isn't great. Across the width of our 9-foot sofa, the image looked the same regardless of where I sat. But if I sat too far off to the side in one of our accent chairs, the image degraded significantly. Colors would wash out, and in extreme cases, you could even see the TV's full array backlighting at work, resulting in, I guess, a kind of reverse halo becoming visible around objects and actors. Now, full disclosure, our Sony X90L suffers a similar fate when viewed too far off axis. So this isn't a knock just against the 7, nor is it an outright deal breaker, as a lot of LED-based TVs can have this issue. Another potential for concern, and similar to the 9, is that the 7 screen becomes very reflective the more off axis you sit. So those with a lot of windows to the side or behind your sofa, you may want to take special note. While the 7 does get bright enough to combat most ambient light, either from a window or, say, overhead lighting, it's not a miracle worker, and in some more extreme instances could be rendered unwatchable. If you have blinds or curtains, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. But if you can't control the light in your room, the 7 may not be the best option. Now, one area where the 7's more budget-oriented focus was easily observed was in the speed of the Google OS and on-screen menus. While the 7 has the same OS and menu tree as the 9, it isn't as snappy or responsive to remote commands as the more expensive 9. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something that jumped out at me and was immediately noticeable. And lastly, I don't like that in 2025, Sony still makes you choose between HDMI 2.0 and 2.1 ports on their TVs. I could maybe excuse it if this split occurred only in their cheaper models, but it doesn't. The costlier 9 has the same input concerns as the 7. While gaming on the 7 was terrific and the TV passed all of my gaming tests, including being able to game at higher frame rates with no issue, die-hard gamers with more than one next-gen console will be forced to use one of the Sony's lesser HDMI ports if they also want to enjoy full surround sound using a separate receiver connected to the 7's ARC eARC port. Now, I've made more than a few comparisons to the Sony Bravia 9 throughout this review, and as good as the 7 is, the 9 is still the king. That said, if you're looking for an accurate, trouble-free Sony TV for more everyday or casual viewing, and you don't fancy yourself a die-hard videophile, I think the 7 may represent the smarter buy. It's definitely the greater value, all things considered. Now, compared to our current reference TV, Sony's previous generation X90L, I have to say, I am all in on the newer Bravia 7. It is a clear upgrade, and the presence of mini LEDs over the X90L's more traditional LED backlighting makes a difference that I believe even casual viewers are going to notice. That said, I am not about to ditch our X90L for one pretty big reason. It's a 98-inch display. While I prefer the greater accuracy and superior contrast of the 7, the sheer size of the X90L is still enough of a draw, at least for me, that I would continue to choose it over any 85-inch display on the market. But if you can't accommodate a 98-inch display, make no mistake, the 7 is the better TV and very much worth the upgrade. TCL's QM8 still ranks among my favorite TVs of the past year and goes toe-to-toe with the 7 here, and in many ways you could even consider it superior. Retailing for the same money, the QM8 gets brighter than the Bravia 7, which may be the difference maker if you're dealing with a brighter space. Both TVs have similar off-axis and reflectivity concerns, though I found the Google OS implementation on the TCL to be a little bit more responsive than how it feels on the 7. The fact that you can get the QM8 in a 98-inch model is why I would still choose it over the 7, but all things being equal, these are two very comparable televisions. The Sony is more accurate out of the box, at least in our experience, so if you want one of the better, more obtainable 85-inch mini LED displays that you just set it, forget it, and enjoy, the Sony Bravia 7 is that TV. So that's it. That is now my review of Sony's new Bravia 7 Mini LED TV. What did you guys think? Sound off down in the comments below. And if you have a question or maybe I missed a comparison, go ahead and include that down in the comments as well. I don't know if we're going to be back with Unplugged anytime soon. We're not canceling the show or anything like that, but as you know, if you've been following along on social media or you've checked out our community pages, you know that Christy and I are currently dealing with a bit of a family issue. Everybody's fine. We're all fine. Thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. for all of the well wishes, but we are taking a little bit of extra time to care for her parents at the moment. And that's why our posting schedule has been a little bit erratic and may continue to be erratic for the foreseeable future. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much for all of your support, for hanging in there with us. I promise someday, very soon, we are going to get back to our twice a week posting schedule. We're even going to do a live. But until then, just remember, the only person who has to like anything in your system is you. But more importantly than that, take care of yourselves, take care of your family, check in, just be present. Be present. That's the takeaway. Yeah. So anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And until next time, we'll have a great... It's been so long since I've done this. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. And yeah, I just can't thank you guys enough. So have a good one. Peace. I love you all. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye.